Longtime lurker, first-time poster. I am a pediatric occupational therapist who recently moved back to my hometown after my divorce to be closer to family, especially my sister and her two daughters, Nina and Zoe. I'm at a complete loss regarding my niece Nina and a situation that's tearing our family apart and honestly making me question if I'm overreacting. For context, I've always been the fun uncle. After my marriage fell apart last year, I decided to move back home to rebuild my life around family. I got a great job at a pediatric clinic working with special needs kids, and things were going well until about 6 months ago. So here's where everything went sideways. Nina told school officials that her bus driver had made sexually inappropriate comments to her. Obviously, this was taken extremely seriously. The driver was immediately removed from his route, and there was a full investigation. I was really proud of Nina for speaking up, and I even took time off work to go with my sister to meetings with school administrators. But then the school's investigation uncovered bus camera footage showing the entire interaction. And guys, Nina had completely fabricated the whole thing. The footage clearly showed that the driver had simply told her to sit down because she kept standing while the bus was moving. He never said anything remotely inappropriate. She just made it up because she was mad about being disciplined. Despite being completely cleared by video evidence, the driver's reputation was seriously damaged in our small community. He ended up resigning and leaving the district entirely because of the stress and stigma. His life was significantly changed because of a lie. This really troubled me, especially because of my profession. I work with vulnerable children every day, and an accusation like that against me, even if completely false, could destroy my career and reputation instantly. I'm not exaggerating when I say I could lose my license and livelihood over something like that. Fast forward to yesterday, when my mom called about Zoe's upcoming 9th birthday party. She started the conversation normally, asking about my week and such, then gently suggested I should put this misunderstanding with Nina behind me and attend the family celebration. The way she phrased it made it clear my sister had put her up to this. I tried to explain as calmly as possible that I wasn't comfortable being around Nina given her history of making serious false accusations. I told my mom I was genuinely concerned about protecting myself, especially considering my profession working with vulnerable children. Her tone immediately changed. She went from gentle suggestion to full-on mom mode, telling me I was being ridiculous and that Nina is just a child who made a mistake, and that families should forgive each other. I reminded her that this mistake destroyed someone's career and reputation, but she brushed it off as if it was a minor issue. The conversation got worse when she accused me of punishing an innocent 8-year-old because of her sister's behavior. She demanded to know what I planned to do about holidays and family gatherings in the future. I explained calmly that I wasn't cutting contact with anyone. I was just establishing boundaries to protect myself professionally. I mentioned again how the driver's life had been significantly damaged by Nina's lies, and this wasn't just some minor childhood fib. My mom got increasingly frustrated, her voice rising with each word. She argued that Nina was just seeking attention and had learned her lesson. What really gets me is that neither my sister nor my mom seem to grasp the gravity of what Nina did. They keep minimizing it, treating it as normal kid behavior to make up sexual allegations against adults. I stood firm and told her I would send Zoe a gift and take her out separately for her birthday, but I would not attend an event where Nina was present until I saw evidence of meaningful change in her behavior. Some actual remorse would be a start. That's when my mom called me an unforgiving asshole and hung up on me. I sat there looking at my phone, surprised that she was so dismissive about a false accusation that destroyed someone's career and could easily do the same to mine. About an hour later, my phone blew up with angry texts from my sister, claiming I was creating unnecessary drama and dividing the family over a child's mistake. She said I was being selfish and that Nina was going through a phase. My brother-in-law Marcus is actually the only one who seems to get it. He texted me privately saying he understands my concerns and is actually really worried about Nina's behavior patterns too. But he's caught in the middle because it's his kid. I'm honestly questioning if I'm overreacting here. On one hand, I understand Nina is young and kids make mistakes. On the other hand, this wasn't stealing candy or telling a typical childhood lie. This was a calculated false accusation that had serious consequences for for an innocent person. And given my profession, I feel like I'd be putting myself at risk by being around someone who's shown she's willing to make up serious allegations when she doesn't get her way. My mom keeps insisting that family comes first. But shouldn't that work both ways? Shouldn't my family be concerned about protecting me too? The whole situation has me stressed to the point I'm not sleeping well. Am I wrong for feeling uncomfortable around my niece after what she did? I love my family, but I also need to protect myself professionally. Please be honest. I can take it. Now for the first update. I did not expect my post about my niece's false accusations to blow up like this. Thank you all for the supportive comments and advice. It helped me feel less crazy about setting boundaries with my family. After posting here last week, things got even more complicated with my family situation. Marcus reached out to me the same evening I made my post. It was kind of surprising since he's usually pretty quiet about family drama. He called me after his shift ended and basically said he completely understood why I was concerned about being around Nina. He admitted he's been really troubled by her behavior too, but feels stuck in this position between supporting his daughter and acknowledging how serious what she did was. Apparently, he and my sister have been arguing about how to handle the situation. He thinks there should be serious consequences, while my sister keeps insisting it's just a phase, and that punishing Nina too harshly might damage her self-esteem. Eye roll. Marcus told me he's been trying to get my sister to take Nina to therapy for months now, even before the bus driver incident, because he's noticed other concerning behaviors. But my sister keeps brushing him off, saying all preteens are difficult and Nina is just dramatic. False accusations go way beyond typical preteen drama, sis. After several phone calls with my mom and sister over the next few days, during which I stood my ground about not attending if Nina was there, we finally reached a compromise about Zoe's birthday party. Nina would spend the day with my aunt's family while I attended Zoe's celebration. My sister wasn't happy about it, but Marcus backed me up, which I think is the only reason she eventually agreed. The birthday party itself went well. Zoe was thrilled with the science kit I got her. Several of you suggested educational gifts. Thanks for that. And she didn't seem bothered by her sister's absence. But then came the confrontation. As we were cleaning up after the party, my mom cornered me in the kitchen. Before I could escape, my sister joined us, and it quickly turned into what felt like an intervention. My mom started in with how disappointed she was that I had forced the family to choose sides, and created this whole situation where Nina had to be excluded from her own sister's birthday party. She had that classic mom guilt trip tone that instantly makes you feel like you're 12 years old again. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about. My sister was there, and I could tell she'd been crying. She told me Nina had locked herself in her room when told she couldn't come to the party, screaming that everyone was turning against her. Apparently, Nina had been asking all week if I hated her now. Talk about emotional manipulation. This kid knows exactly what she's doing. I stayed calm and explained that actions have consequences. What Nina did wasn't just a little white lie. It could have resulted in criminal charges against an innocent person. I reminded them that the bus driver had lost his job and had his reputation destroyed in our small town where everyone talks. That's when my sister set me off by suggesting I was being overdramatic, since the bus driver wasn't actually charged with anything. She was minimizing the fact that this man lost his job and had to move away because of what Nina did. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'll admit I got heated at this point. Who wouldn't? I laid out exactly how accusations like this could end my entire career working with special needs children. One false allegation, and I could lose my license, my reputation, and my entire livelihood. I asked my sister if she'd be so dismissive if her own career was hanging in the balance. That finally made her pause. Then my mom said that Nina has actually been seeing a therapist since the incident. But when I asked what they were working on in therapy, my mom said it was for attention-seeking behavior, facepalm, not for understanding the serious moral implications of making false accusations, not for developing empathy for the person whose life she damaged, but just for being too obvious about wanting attention. Talk about missing the point entirely. I tried to make them see that they still weren't acknowledging the real issue. What Nina did wasn't just attention-seeking. It was a calculated lie that caused real harm to an innocent person. Neither of them has ever directly acknowledged that, which is why I don't trust that Nina understands the gravity of what she did. The kitchen confrontation took a turn when Marcus walked in, asking why everyone was raising their voices. He backed me up, saying our family has a pattern of making excuses for Nina's increasingly troubling behavior. He mentioned several incidents I hadn't even heard about. Nina getting caught stealing money from a teacher's desk, spreading rumors about classmates, and manipulating friends into getting in trouble. My sister has apparently been hiding these issues from the extended family. That's when my sister finally broke down. For real this time, not the performative tears from earlier. She admitted she felt like a failure as a mother and was terrified that Nina was developing serious character flaws. But she was also hurt that I seemed to have completely written her daughter off. This was the first genuine moment in the whole conversation, and it actually made me feel a bit bad for her. Parenting is hard enough without worrying your kid might have serious issues. We ended up reaching a tentative agreement. I would consider limited, supervised interactions with Nina if she demonstrated genuine remorse and understanding of her actions. Not just a forced apology, but actual evidence that she gets why what she did was wrong and harmful. Later that evening, Marcus texted me privately with something that concerned me. He said Nina's therapist had suggested there might be a diagnosis beyond typical attention-seeking behavior, but my sister isn't ready to accept it yet. He didn't specify what the potential diagnosis was, but it sounds serious. Several commenters suggested various possibilities, and I'm starting to wonder if you guys might be right. I'm left feeling really conflicted. On one hand, I still need to protect myself professionally. On the other hand, I'm genuinely worried about what's going on with my niece. If there's something more serious happening with Nina than just being a difficult child, then maybe keeping my distance isn't helping the situation. Edit. To clarify, I'm a male occupational therapist. Lots of people in the comments assumed I was female for some reason. Also, when I say Nina is 12, she was 11 when the bus driver incident happened about 6 months ago. She's definitely old enough to understand the concept of lying and the consequences of serious accusations. I'm supposed to attend a family dinner next weekend where Nina will be present. Marcus has arranged for her therapist to facilitate a conversation between us. Not sure what to expect, but I'll update again after that happens. Thanks again for all the advice. You've given me a lot to think about. Now for the second update. Update 2. Well, it's been 2 weeks since my last post about the family dinner with my niece's therapist. First, thank you all for the supportive comments and advice on my previous posts. Original post got locked by mods for some reason, but you can still see my first update on my profile. The family dinner I was dreading finally happened last Sunday. I showed up at my sister's house. Marcus had texted me earlier saying the therapist was already there and everyone was waiting. I sat in my car for a few minutes to collect myself. As a healthcare professional, I've participated in plenty of difficult family meetings, but being part of one as an actual family member was different. When I walked in, everyone was in the living room. Ellie and Marcus on either side of Nina on the couch, my mom in the armchair, and a woman I assumed was the therapist sitting across from them. Nina was staring at the floor, arms crossed. The therapist introduced herself as Dr. Sullivan and thanked me for coming. Before we even got into the actual conversation, she asked if she could share some context with me, looking to my sister and Marcus for permission. With Ellie and Marcus nodding their consent, Dr. Sullivan explained that Nina had recently been diagnosed with conduct disorder. For those not familiar, I only had a vague understanding from my healthcare background. Conduct disorder is characterized by persistent patterns of manipulative behavior and disregard for others' rights or feelings. This goes way beyond typical preteen attitude problems or attention-seeking. I tried keeping my expression neutral, but inside I was reeling. According to Dr. Sullivan, Nina's false accusation against the bus driver wasn't an isolated incident. She had made similar, though less serious, false claims about teachers and classmates over the past 2 years. My sister had hidden these incidents from extended family out of shame and fear of judgment. Marcus jumped in at this point, explaining that things had gotten progressively worse over the past year. Nina had stolen money from a teacher's desk, spread vicious rumors about classmates that led to serious bullying situations, and manipulated friends into getting into trouble while she avoided consequences. The bus driver incident was what finally forced them to confront the severity of the situation. My mom sat silently through all of this, her usual readiness to defend Nina notably absent. I could see the shock on her face. She truly hadn't known the extent of Nina's behavior. All those times she dismissed Nina's actions as just seeking attention or being dramatic now seemed almost cruel in their simplicity. Dr. Sullivan then guided us into a structured discussion. Nina sat between her parents as the therapist explained the purpose of the meeting: to establish honest communication and appropriate boundaries within the family. When prompted to explain her understanding of why I had been keeping my distance, Nina shrugged and mumbled, "Because I got in trouble about the bus driver." There was zero recognition of the harm caused, no acknowledgement that she had lied and potentially ruined someone's life. Dr. Sullivan noted my reaction and gently but firmly explained to Nina how serious false accusations are, especially ones of a sexual nature. Nina suddenly interrupted, claiming everyone was targeting her and that the bus driver had been mean to her first by telling her to sit down. I've seen similar behavior in some of my patients with conduct issues, but witnessing it in my own niece hit differently. The therapist calmly redirected, asking Nina to consider how she would feel if someone made up a lie about her that got her expelled from school. For the first time, Nina seemed to pause and actually think about it, but her demeanor hardened again. Sullivan then asked me to express my feelings directly to Nina. Talk about being put on the spot. I carefully explained how her actions affected not just the bus driver, but my trust in her. I talked about my work with vulnerable children and how false accusations could end my career instantly. I made it clear that this wasn't about punishment, but about trust and safety. I couldn't risk being alone with someone who had shown a pattern of making false accusations. To everyone's surprise, Nina looked directly at me and asked, "Do you hate me now?" It was the first time she'd shown any concern for how others perceived her actions rather than just the consequences to herself. The question caught me off guard, and for a moment, I saw past the manipulation to the kid underneath. "I don't hate you, Nina," I said carefully, "but I need to see consistent evidence that you understand the seriousness of false accusations before I can feel comfortable being alone with you again." Dr. Sullivan used this exchange to transition into discussing a structured plan moving forward. Nina would write a letter of apology to the former bus driver, which wouldn't actually be sent, but would be an exercise in empathy. I would attend family dinners where Nina was present, but not be alone with her until significant progress had been made in her treatment. We established clear boundaries and expectations for everyone involved. After the session concluded, Nina's demeanor returned to indifference as soon as the therapist ended the formal discussion. The vulnerability I had witnessed was gone. It was a reminder that we had a long road ahead. My sister asked me to stay for dinner, which was awkward but not as terrible as I expected. Nina was quiet throughout the meal, occasionally looking at me. My mom tried to engage in conversation, clearly processing everything she'd learned. After dinner, while Nina was upstairs and my mom was helping with dishes, Ellie pulled me aside to talk privately. She broke down completely, admitting she'd been in denial about Nina's behavior for years. The conduct disorder diagnosis had been devastating to her. She kept saying things like, "What did I do wrong? And how did I miss this?" I tried to reassure her that this wasn't her fault, that some kids develop these issues regardless of parenting. From what I've read about conduct disorder, there's often a complex mix of genetic and environmental factors, but I could tell she didn't believe me. Marcus joined us and explained they'd been working with the school to implement a comprehensive treatment plan. Nina was now seeing Dr. Sullivan twice weekly, had daily check-ins with the school counselor, and was on a strict behavioral contract, both at home and at school. Any violation resulted in immediate consequences, with the goal being to help her develop empathy and understand the impact of her actions on others. To clarify, since many are asking, conduct disorder isn't the same as being a bad kid. It's a diagnosed mental health condition that requires professional intervention. It doesn't excuse Nina's behavior, but it does explain it and provide a framework for treatment. Many children with conduct disorder can improve significantly with the right therapeutic approach, though I'm trying to be realistic about the challenges ahead. Over the next few weeks, I've gradually increased my presence at family gatherings. I've made an effort to interact with Nina in group settings, always keeping our conversations light and supervision constant. I've noticed small improvements. She seems less prone to outbursts, and more willing to follow rules when clear consequences are established. But I remain cautious, watching for signs that her apparent progress is just another manipulation. Marcus has been texting me regular updates on Nina's therapy progress, which I appreciate. The therapist is focusing on developing empathy and impulse control, two areas where Nina struggles significantly. There have been setbacks. Nina was caught in another lie at school last week, but the difference now is that everyone is on the same page about addressing these behaviors consistently. My sister is finally taking this seriously, attending parent guidance sessions and working closely with Dr. Sullivan to implement appropriate strategies at home. My mom has changed, no longer making excuses for Nina's behavior, but instead supporting the structured approach the therapist recommended. I'm still maintaining firm boundaries. I won't be alone with Nina anytime soon, and I've made that clear to everyone. But I'm cautiously optimistic that with consistent treatment and family support, Nina might eventually develop the empathy and impulse control she currently lacks. Edit 2:05 p.m. Just got a text from Marcus that Nina's school is planning a community event next weekend where kids work with local therapists, including OTs like me, on projects for elderly residents. Nina's therapist thinks it would be good for her to see me. I'm a bit nervous about this, but also think it might be helpful. We'll update if anything significant happens there. Thanks again for all the advice and support. This situation with my niece is far from resolved, but at least now we have a path forward. I'll update again after the community event if there are any notable developments. Now for the final update. Final update, the conclusion to the saga with my niece. First, thank you to everyone who's followed along and offered advice. Your support has meant everything during this mess. It's been about 5 weeks since the community center incident I mentioned in my last edit. After Nina lied about me giving her special permissions at the center, things finally came to a head in a way I never expected. That emergency family meeting I mentioned turned out to be a major turning point for everyone involved. The day after the meeting, I got a call from Nina's therapist. She wanted to schedule another session with me present, which honestly made me nervous. The last one had been draining enough, and I wasn't particularly eager to sit through another after Nina's latest stunt. But Marcus texted me saying it was important, so I agreed. When I arrived at Dr. Sullivan's office, I was surprised to find only Ellie and Marcus there, no Nina. Dr. Sullivan explained that she wanted to talk to the three of us first before bringing Nina in. She laid out what she called a critical juncture in Nina's treatment. Apparently, the community center incident represented a significant escalation because Nina had deliberately sought me out to create a situation where she could lie about me. This wasn't random or opportunistic. It was calculated. She knew my schedule at the center and convinced her friend to go with her specifically when I'd be there. Dr. Sullivan explained this was concerning because it showed Nina was testing boundaries in increasingly sophisticated ways. What really shocked me was Ellie's reaction. Instead of getting defensive or making excuses like before, she just sat there nodding. When Dr. Sullivan finished, Ellie turned to me and said something I never thought I'd hear. "We need your help, but we also need to protect you." Marcus explained that they'd been implementing Dr. Sullivan's behavioral plan at home with strict consistency for weeks. Any lying resulted in immediate consequences. Loss of privileges, additional chores, no exceptions. Nina had been improving in some areas, but then would test boundaries in new ways. The community center incident was her most calculated attempt yet. Dr. Sullivan then laid out a new approach. Nina needed more intensive therapy and a completely unified family response. No mixed messages, no exceptions, no one person being the bad guy. She also recommended something that surprised me, that I temporarily step back from family gatherings for about a month while they implemented a more structured intervention. This was the exact opposite of what my mom and sister had been pushing for all along. Remember all those guilt trips about family unity? Dr. Sullivan explained that my presence had become a trigger for Nina's manipulative behavior. She was using me as a test case to see if she could still get away with lying. By removing that opportunity, they could focus on her core behaviors without new complications. I felt relieved. For months, I'd been painted as the villain for maintaining boundaries, and now a professional was not only validating my concerns, but suggesting I step back even further. Ellie reached over and squeezed my hand, apologizing for not listening to me sooner. It was honestly one of the most validating moments of this whole ordeal. I may have teared up a bit, not gonna lie. We agreed to the plan. I would step back from family gatherings for 4 weeks while they implemented the intensive intervention. I'd still be in regular contact with Ellie and Marcus by phone, but wouldn't see Nina during this critical period. Dr. Sullivan believed that if Nina couldn't rely on manipulating situations with me, she'd be forced to confront her core behavioral issues more directly. The next month was strange. I missed seeing Zoe, who was thankfully doing well despite all the family drama, but Marcus sent me regular updates. Nina initially responded to my absence with indifference, claiming she didn't care if I was around or not. But as the weeks went on and her parents maintained absolute consistency with consequences, something started to shift. 3 weeks into the intervention, Ellie called me in tears. Nina had had a breakthrough session with Dr. Sullivan where she finally acknowledged the harm her lies had caused, not just to the bus driver or to me, but to her friend who had been uncomfortable with the community center lie, and to her sister who couldn't have normal family gatherings. According to Dr. Sullivan, this was the first genuine display of empathy they'd seen from Nina, though she cautioned us not to expect overnight changes. At the 4-week mark, Dr. Sullivan invited me back for another session. This time, Nina was present, sitting between her parents. When Dr. Sullivan asked if she had something to say to me, Nina handed me a letter. Sullivan explained that writing letters was part of her therapy, a way to organize her thoughts without the immediate pressure of face-to-face conversation. The letter wasn't an apology, but it was honest for Nina. She wrote that she didn't understand why lying was such a big deal at first, because it seemed to solve her problems. She wrote about how the bus driver had made her mad by telling her to sit down, validating what we knew from the video, and how making up the story had felt powerful. She admitted lying about me at the community center because she wanted to see if she could still control situations, her words, apparently from therapy. The last part of the letter hit me hardest. She wrote that she was starting to realize that when people found out she lied, they stopped trusting her, and that made her feel worse than whatever problem she was trying to solve with the lie in the first place. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it showed a level of self-awareness I hadn't seen from her before. After the session, Dr. Sullivan took me aside and was very clear. Nina still had a long road ahead. Conduct disorder doesn't resolve quickly, and there would likely be more challenges. But this was genuine progress, and with continued therapy and consistency, Nina had a good chance of developing better coping mechanisms over time. The real surprise came a week later when my mom invited me over for dinner. I was hesitant, but she insisted Nina wouldn't be there. She was staying with a cousin for the weekend as part of her new routine. Structured time away from home with trusted family members was apparently part of the therapy plan. When I arrived, I found not just my mom, but Ellie, Marcus, and Zoe waiting. My mom had prepared all my favorite foods. After dinner, while Zoe was watching TV in the other room, my mom formally apologized to me. She admitted she'd been in denial about Nina's behavior for years, making excuses instead of addressing the real issues. She said watching me maintain firm boundaries had eventually forced her to confront the situation honestly. Took her long enough, but better late than never. Ellie joined in, acknowledging how unfair it had been to expect me to put myself at risk professionally just to maintain a false sense of family harmony. Marcus shared that Nina's school had reported significant improvements in her behavior, though she still had occasional setbacks. The comprehensive approach, therapy, medication, consistent boundaries, school involvement, was slowly making a difference. The most meaningful part was when they presented me with a formal written agreement they'd all signed, including Nina, apparently. It outlined the boundaries we'd discussed and the expectations for Nina's behavior, with specific provisions about not being alone with her until Dr. R. Sullivan confirmed significant and sustained progress in her treatment. They'd even made a copy for Nina's grandparents and other extended family members who might have Nina in their care. It wasn't a perfect solution. Nothing with conduct disorder ever is, but it was a tremendous step forward. For the first time since this all began, I felt like my concerns were being taken seriously by everyone involved, not just Marcus. I've gradually started attending family functions again, always with clear boundaries in place. Nina's behavior has been consistently better, though I'm still cautious. She's been showing small signs of progress, catching herself before lying, accepting consequences without massive tantrums, even occasionally showing concern for others. Dr. Sullivan says these are promising indicators, though we all understand there's no quick fix for conduct disorder. As for the bus driver who started all this, Marcus managed to track him down through a former colleague. He's working at a school district about 30 miles away now. With Dr. Sullivan's guidance, they decided it wouldn't be helpful to directly contact him, which could just re-traumatize him, but they made a significant anonymous donation to his school's transportation department in his name. It's not justice exactly, but it was something positive coming from all this mess. Edit. A lot of you asked about how Zoe is handling all of this. She's actually doing remarkably well. The therapy team recommended being age-appropriately honest with her about Nina's condition, which has helped her understand that her sister's behavior isn't her fault or responsibility. She started seeing a counselor too, just for support, not because there are concerns about her, and she and I have special uncle-niece days twice a month that are just for us. The kid is surprisingly resilient, makes me proud to be her uncle. Life after all this Nina drama is definitely different, but in many ways better than before. I'm in a much healthier place with my family now, with boundaries that everyone respects and understands.